Now, this is episode number 4 of I Swear to Drunk I'm Not God. And believe it or not, I have a guest, another one. I have more than like one friend. And this is my really, really good friend of like 35 years in like planet terms, in like some other planet.
Interdimensionally, it's probably about 1,000, but yes. So far 10.
Exactly. So hold on, let me check one thing because now I can't hear you. But you're still there. Okay. So we've been friends for like, I don't know, 2012. So 10 years solid.
10 years. Yes.
Going on 11 now. And you are who?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me introduce myself. I'm Salvador. And we work together.
Everybody who knows me knows Sal. So
I'm the side piece.
I think it's safe to say that everybody knows me knows Sal. Sal I've known for almost 11 years. We worked together, but we ended up being really, 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 really good friends. And at this point, there are things that he knows about me that a lot of people don't know.
That is very true.
And probably vice versa. Exactly. So I'm so excited. And I could not think of a better person to be on this particular episode because this is going to be like one of those segment type episode. And I named the segment, and the segment's called Tales from the Cryptid.
Okay.
I know. It feels like a dad joke, but I'm fucking with it.
I know.
And I like,
I said, this is your jam.
This is my jam.
On the side of crime and punishment, it jumps to cryptids. Or just paranormal, really.
like the weirdest shit you could possibly think of. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to read about it. I'm going to read about it a lot. And then I'll watch.
Then you have a study session for yourself.
Then I'll watch every documentary for like 4 days straight on the topic. And then guess what? In 5 years, I won't remember any of this shit. Actually, in like 5 months, I won't remember any of the details. I was thinking about the other night because I was in the bed and I was like, name one of H.H. Holmes's wives.
And you knew.
I knew just one.
But that's all you asked yourself.
But then, of course, I was like, well, who's the second one? Because I only remembered the second one, but I couldn't remember the name of the first one. And I was like, that wasn't even that long ago. The fact that I truly don't remember.
I think you crammed for a test and then
and then I lost it. But it's coming to me now. It was Clara. Clara Lovering was H.H. Holmes' first wife.
That recall.
So, okay. So there's that. But we ain't talking about him. We're talking about, in Tales from the Cryptid, the motherfucking Mothman. Like,
that dude terrorized people.
He terrorized multiple communities, like counties of people. Now, this was even crazier too, like researching this and having to, one thing I had already watched the documentary before. I obviously have known about Mothman before. I was about to say Mouthman. That's not his name.
We don't know about that yet.
That ain't his name. And I knew about Mothman before, but I never really dove into it like that, to like, especially outside of like what I just knew surface. Like I knew about Indrid Cold and I knew about the UFO sightings that were related to the Mothman sightings.
I don't know a lot about that.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna have to like really.
Yeah, this, I think you're going to, I mean, again, I don't think that I could have possibly had a better person.
Just, my answer for everything is aliens.
Aliens.
If something goes wrong,
I was trying to get Sal to be motherfucking Giorgio Tsoukalos from Ancient Aliens for Halloween.
Yeah, the best hair on television.
The phenomenal hair. Like, you cannot get, like, who is your hairdresser? Because I got to know.
And
a wind tunnel.
And do you have one, or do you do that yourself?
Do you do it? But I just, for some reason, could just imagine.
He got rollers on and sprays and sets it.
Oh yeah, and then we're gonna find out later that he actually like uses one of those like Dyson.
The Flobies.
What did I call them?
Floby, I think it was.
Or
the haircut thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
all right. Oh, seriously. I'm so excited to talk about this because I learned so much about this motherfucker. And it's not just the Mothman. The Mothman has so many layers. I mean, there is history, Native American history, excuse me. Super heavy Native American history. And then by the end of it, I was asking about 36 questions. I was like, wait, I thought I had the information, but I don't. And that's what I found so beautiful about the topic itself, because it was like they have, if all of this is true, they have so much information and so many accounts that I feel like the average person would be like, well, obviously it's true. Like, how is it
If
that
so
all
many people are talking about it, it's got to be true. Like, how can you make this up?
Yeah. And you know how I feel too. I'm like, is it truly possible for everybody to have like a collective hallucination? And there's a part of the Mothman prophecies that honestly, in the beginning, John Keel, the writer of Mothman prophecies, sounds very skeptical. From the very beginning, he sounds like, even though he wrote the book in 1975, this happened between 1966 and 1967, so he had some time. Right. But you can tell that he wasn't sure. He was like, I mean, a lot of these people are religious. So is this a religious experience? Is this something that they're correlating with the devil and things? Because as human beings, sometimes we create these things and they become our reality.
Well, like you said, it's mass hysteria.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you say this about like as a mass type of people, if you keep hearing a story over, it's like us, in the Latino community.
Yeah.
We have La Llorona.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know if she's true. I don't know, but I've always heard that.
And that's more than enough.
That's it. Even, Boogeyman.
Yeah, for sure.
For everybody.
For sure. But I think what's interesting too is to really take apart how things like this have a legacy that's this deep. You see what I'm saying? It's just like situation after situation after situation after situation that we end up documenting, and it becomes a part of this like much bigger tapestry, this much bigger story. And then it's like 50 years later, or 60 years later, this is now the legacy. This is the full story. And then the people, small town in West Virginia, who are a part of that legacy, who would have otherwise not been a part of probably any legacy, because small towns,
they get forgotten.
They get forgotten.
Goes there.
Yeah.
If you're from there, that's the only
unless you have some weird shit like this, nobody is going to feel the need to just be like, I'm going to stop over and Point Pleasant.
Yeah, you want to stop? Let's go over there and go see those.
Yeah. And no disrespect to Point Pleasant, of course, because I'm sure it is just like the Point. It's very pleasant.
It's very pleasant. It was that way for a reason.
Exactly. So here's the thing. Let's do it. So now, most people know Mothman because of the movie, the 2002 movie, Mothman Prophecies. And I will say that it is a pretty good goddamn movie. Because it came out in 2002, that's fine. You got Richard Gere. You got Laura fucking Linney, which is like,
gosh,
love her. And I like the movie too because it's moody, and I like moody shit, but I don't watch it a lot. And I don't know why. Because you know how I am. How many times I've seen 267 times. And how many times I've seen Clue. Like, I go through my phases where I really like a movie and then I watch it. But this one always kind of truly freaked me out. I'm not even gonna lie.
I only saw it when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I saw it multiple times, but when I did see it, it was pretty creepy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very realistic to where like you start thinking like, well, this could be true.
It's like, but here's the thing too. I don't think I knew that it was based on a book at that time, even though obviously I'm sure they were lining the bookshelves with it and like, you know what I mean, at that time.
Yeah.
But now, like, once I found out, I was like, wait a minute, this movie feels different now.
Yeah.
And not even that reading the book, obviously, it's not that accurate. It's not that accurate at all.
It's a lot of fiction. But
it takes the elements for sure. Now, it creeped me out. And to me, you have to either be direct threat to me to creep me out like this, or you have to show me a movie that disturbs me. And I've seen some disturbing shit. I've seen like Solo and Cannibal Holocaust and all that weird shit, which to me are really just tests to see how much you can really handle. Because
is it for you, or is it to see how far that director was going to
go? Well, it's that for me. Like, to me, it's literally just a test to see how much I can handle. But then for that director, I'm sure they have some like artistic, reason behind it. But if we're being honest, you knew what type of movie you were making. You don't make a movie where you're fucking butchering a turtle, which is what they did in Cannibal Holocaust.
Ooh.
And not...
No thanks. I'm good.
Sorry. Trigger warning. A little late, but trigger warning. But those movies, I say they know that the gnarly parts are what's gonna pack the punch. Those movies are never gonna be the greatest movies of all time, even though to me they transfer just a lot of fucking energy because you're witnessing something. You're like, oh my god, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. And I'm not saying that I was as disturbed by this movie as I was those, because it's a different type of disturbed.
Right.
And I feel like communication, don't they say like communication is like 93% of what you see? Like, you know what I mean? Just like what you're, yeah. If I gotta watch you butcher a turtle, you're transferring a lot of energy to me. And I don't think my cup will ever be that.
That's a memory I never want. Why would you do that?
Exactly. But anyway, I digress. Now, the movie is movie. The tone I find very unique. I think the movie's captivating. But the Mothman Prophecies, the book, is even better. And I think that if anybody is listening that's interested in it should definitely read it and go watch the movie. And it was funny too, because when I pulled up an episode of William Shatner's Unexplained.
The Unexplained. Oh my God, I love that.
And I was like, there was a scene when he does his little intro, and then he said, "The Mothman," and I was like, God damn, I just melted.
Damn, I'm shoot. Now that we talk about trigger words, shoot.
I was like, oh God. I was like, whoa, I can listen to him say the Mothman on repeat before bed. Like, I melted. The Mothman.
Rewind.
Oh my God. So, all right. So, anyway, I was looking up episodes of that, and it was great. It was interesting, but nearly not as much information as you would get from the book. Now, it's loosely based on the book, like I said, but the fact that it's like nonfiction is terrifying. I think that most of the novel was like interview based, where he was like interviewing all these people that were having these encounters, but then he also was having his own experience. It wasn't limited to the people. Like he got to a point where he was getting harassed. Like,
but he as an author was there and had an experience.
Oh yeah. Multiple.
I wasn't sure if he was just like documenting stuff.
He was documenting, and then he started experiencing it. And so to follow him chronicling this and being kind of a skeptic in the beginning, and then by the end of it, I'm like, motherfucker, you sound like a believer. Yeah. But the book also, to me, asks a lot of potent questions about reality and about just being on this planet and what it means to exist on it. And if there was a species that was outside looking in on us, they would question our existence. They're like, what are y'all doing down here? And I think that Mothman experience, the UFO sightings, and the Men in Black sightings, which were happening at the same time, and the Indrid Cold sightings, which, obviously we'll get into that. It adds a lot of layers to it that I didn't expect. Now, I did feel too like his interpretation of what happened was a perfect balance of like, I'm not sure what to believe and truth.
You're still like, it's still an open ending.
Yeah. It was like, I don't know. I feel like if all of this is happening, you're giving me enough information to believe that all things are possible. Even if it's not a giant bird or all the other things that I listed, something else is possible. It's and other things exist.
Absolutely.
So he recounted all these experiences. Obviously, like I said, aliens, people who were abducted, people who have been followed, taped. There were people who were just flat out harassed. Obviously, like I said, he was getting like flat out harassed. And it was weird too, because he was simultaneously being fed information that he knew he needed to release and that they wanted him to release, but then at the same time he was being hushed by this other organization that was like, yo, like the Men in Black is where it kind of gets like government-y.
He encountered them during like writing of the book. They even tried to.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's what's crazy. Now, I also believe his experience could be misunderstood as paranoia. Because there are some parts where there's this part where he's like on the phone with the phone company because he's getting so many of these calls from like this entity, whether it be like noises or it'd be sometimes it's actual people, converse. I don't even want to say people. I don't know what they are, but they sound funny. They're trying to portray a human. Yeah. And so he would have those, and he had this exchange with the people at the phone company because he was like, what the fuck? Why I need you all to investigate this. But then he realized that his phones were being tapped. And she was able to confirm that, but then she didn't want to give him written proof that it was happening.
What?
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. I mean, look, all of this could also be the weed pen talking, but I will say that I took a ride on this book, and I would definitely read it again. I think even if it was fiction or nonfiction, it would just be good. So, but anyway, let me shut up. Let me tell you about the Mothman. Now, the Mothman was actually possibly spotted as early as the 1910s and through like into the 1940s. People like historically, there are all these different civilizations that have their own version of some very large bird or some sort of creature.
Some type of bird man.
Yeah, exactly. But, the accounts that we're going to talk about today mostly happened in the 1960s. Now, between 1914 and 1937, there was this like occurrence where like the Ohio River had overflowed and people died. And that was when like these rumors of the Birdman started to pop up. There's always that element of the Birdman being like a harbinger of death,
yes.
And so I think they kind of correlated the river overflowing and all those deaths to those sightings. And that was 1914, between 1914 and 1937.
So you're saying like that mass death would have caused like some type of energy to be like...
Well, it's kind of the other way around, because even we'll see in the Mothman situation, all the sightings occurred right before a disaster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and it's like, so I'm wondering if like, because what he asks too is whether or not these people are connecting this entity to like devil, Satan, evil. So when, they associate it with anything, they're going to associate anything that happens that's bad
evil side
to the evil side. And if you think that this bird is an evil entity, then you're going to associate that event to the bird. But let's talk about Point Pleasant though, because I can't imagine seeing a man-sized winged creature that is like between 6 and 7 feet tall and a wingspan of 10 to 12 feet. I can't imagine seeing that. Like I don't even know if I would be able to handle it, especially in a town like Point Pleasant, which is a small place in West Virginia. They got only 4,000 people as of 2021. And when all of this shit was popping off, there was more than that there. Their population was bigger then.
Oh, so that was...
It seemed like people...
down.
Yeah, exactly. Now, oh my God, I think I'm going to butcher this name, but we're going to go for it. It's the sister city to Galapagos.
Like the Galapagos Islands? Is that what you're...
No, it's Gallipolis.
Okay.
Gallipolis?
Wrong place. Never mind.
This is in Ohio. This is in Ohio. Now, They're connected by the Ohio and the Kanawha rivers, which is actually very pretty when you see an aerial viewpoint of it. So Point Pleasant was also the birthplace of this guy named Carl Probst, who was the engineer and designer of the Jeep. And probably more importantly, the Shawnee chief Cornstalk, who we're definitely going to talk about because the Mothman legacy kind of stems off of Cornstalk. Okay. Yeah. So Gallipolis. I don't know.
Just go for it.
I don't know.
That Jeep.
I really hope that's right. Is the home of Oliver Davidson. And then, well, Olivia Davidson. Why I say Oliver? Olivia Davidson, who was the second wife of Booker T. Washington. And then it is also the home of Bob Evans. Down on the farm. You know, the sausage. We used to get rolls of that shit from. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm going to stop real quick because I never said what we were drinking. We're drinking because we're drunk already, clearly. But we're drinking the Firebird that I kind of pulled out of my ass because I stole it off of a restaurant menu. But it's the Firebird. So it's like pureed strawberries, rosé vodka, and it's supposed to be simple syrup. But we used agave nectar and sugar in the raw with some lemon juice. Ice, delicious. Blend it up. It's actually not bad when you have
very good
when you have it. Okay, so anyway, back to it. Now, so Bob Evans. After that, boom. Now, according to the Mothman prophecies, the Shawnee and the Cherokee occupied the areas to the south and the southwest. The Monacan settled to the east, and the Erie or the Conestoga claimed the areas north of West Virginia. Even the inhospitable deserts of the far west are divided and occupied, but there is only one spot on the map that's labeled uninhabited, and that was West Virginia. So they were kind of avoiding this area. Now, back in the day, this is around the 1760s, the Iroquois had a treaty with these white people, and that was Lord Dunmore. And in the treaty, the Ohio River was supposed to be the dividing line. But the Shawnee, they were like, we never negotiated that. The Iroquois did. We're not honoring that. So that's when they were like, we just gonna have to fight it out then. Like, fuck it, we just gonna have to fight it out. So they did. They tried because they were outnumbered 2-1. So Cornstalk had about 500 soldiers, and that was at the most. And he was allied with the Mingos, but that was because at that point the Europeans had made deals with his other allies. So they were just basically buying off the other allies. So Cornstalk didn't even have anybody to come to his aid other than the Mingos. So here he is. He turns out the Lord Dunmore's guys, and this guy named Colonel Andrew Lewis, they were going to join forces. They were coming from two different directions. They were going to join forces. So Cornstalk had the idea that he's going to try to cut Colonel Lewis off before he can make it to Lord Dunmore.
Like, take care of his help.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to make it where they don't ever meet each other. But he got there, and he fucking lost because he was outnumbered. Now, Lewis had almost 1,000 men. So, it makes sense. Cornstalk, he fights valiantly, but he eventually retreats and he agrees to the Treaty of Camp Charlotte, which means they lost all the land south of the Ohio River. They also had to let all their white captives go, and they had to stop attacking the immigrants that were coming down the river because, they're bringing in settlers and Indians were fucking them up. They're like, shit, like, it is what it is. Like, you're not even supposed to be here. Yeah. So that was called the Battle of Point Pleasant. Now, after the battle, Cornstalk would later return to the land. He was just on a diplomatic trip, but he ended up murdered. And I'm saying diplomatic trip, but it's actually a fucked up story because he returned and his son returned after there were 2 of their fellow Shawnees that were captured by the white man. And so Cornstalk and his son showed up because they were like, why the fuck are y'all holding our people captive? What is this about? Right. The Europeans went ahead and captured all 4 men. So then mysteriously, because there was this asshole by the name of Commander Matthew Arbuckle, who apparently was just waiting to kill an Indian. I keep saying Indian, I'm sorry, Native American, who was waiting to kill a Native American. And there was like this white soldier or militiaman who was killed at the fort. And they said that it was by unrelated Native Americans. So
it had nothing to do with
the four that they had captured, was holding captive. So what they did is they killed all of them. They killed Cornstalk, they killed his son, and they killed the other two men as well, as like some fucked up revenge for what these other two Native Americans did. Like, I didn't even see where it was a fellow like Shawnee. I didn't know like who it was. It was kind of like two unrelated Native Americans. So they took the fall. But Cornstalk, he was just, him and his son were just showing up to ask an honest question. Why the fuck are you holding our people? Right. Now, it's believed that Native Americans were buried in the area, which to me is like, of course they are, because Native Americans are buried everywhere. They had battles everywhere. There were even references to this battle, the Battle of Point Pleasant, when they were losing. They were just pushing them off into the water, which is probably the Ohio River, which we'll find out later what happens with the Ohio River. It's kind of like, maybe it is cursed. Because the legend, because honestly, every ridiculous movie, I won't even say ridiculous, but we love blaming things on Native American culture and curses and Pet Cemetery. You know what I mean? Was The Shining? I feel like The Shining had a Native American element.
I just, sometimes when people talk about, like, in movies where like it's always a cursed burial ground.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't it just be a burial?
Why can't it could have been just a bunch of working class folk who died of old age and they're mad. I don't know. Why did it have to be Native American? But when it's got to be evil and browned. So brown. I said browned. Brown.
I get browned.
But also Native Americans are incredibly spiritual. And I do believe that, if you get on the right person's wrong side, you may have a problem there. Yeah. And you will have a vengeful energy. So it's believed that Cornstalk cursed the town for 200 years. It was even this play that kind of helped perpetuate the rumor in 1923. And basically after that, Cornstalk was blamed for everything that went bad in the whole state. It was always Cornstalk. So there's that man's legacy. You know what I'm saying?
But that was a made-up story.
What?
The play was a made-up story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they blamed, now they're blaming all the bad stuff on him.
Of course. Yeah. Now, fast forward. Picture it. Sicily.
Picture it. Sicily.
No. Picture it. Point Pleasant, 1966, synchronicity, November. Right? And it gets better. Two couples driving around looking for friends, right? The road is dark. And all of a sudden, you see a 7-foot man with wings. Now, of course, you can't keep your eyes off this motherfucker.
You shit your pants and you let go of the wheels. Probably what I would do.
They'd be like, how did she crash? Did she shit her pants before she crashed into the tree? Or was it a result of crashing into the tree? And I'll be in the hospital like, it was the airbag. It hit me in the stomach. They're like, did it hit you in the stomach?
Punched it out of me.
Now, so you try to drive off and it starts to chase you at 90 miles per hour, flying above the car, though. Not flapping its wings. Now, in this account, this woman was like, it ain't flapping its wings then. And when it finally spreads its wing, it shoots straight up into the air. We're not talking about an ascent like Southwest. We're talking Cape Canaveral.
We're talking rocket.
We're talking about a rocket. Now, this happened on November 15th, which was 2 days ago, 1966, to Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallet. Now, the The Scarberries would see this figure around 18 more times after the initial encounter.
All of them, like the family.
Or Roger and Linda, because it was two couples, so it was Roger and Linda. They would repeatedly see it 18 more times. So then from their story is kind of how the story became legend, because their story is kind of like the first reporting. After it, motherfuckers started coming out of the woodworks talking about this shit. So, quote, this is what Roger said. He said, "The lights bobbed away from the building, and the startled foursome saw that they were attached to some huge animal. He said it was shaped like a man, but bigger, maybe 6.5 or 7 feet tall, and it had big wings folded into its back. But it was those eyes that got us." Then Linda said it had 2 big eyes like automobile reflectors. Yeah,
almost like a bug.
Yeah, exactly, like a big ass fly.
Light.
Yeah, she said they were hypnotic. Then Roger said, "For a minute, we could only stare at it. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. It was grayish in color and walked on sturdy man-like legs. It turned slowly and shuffled towards the door of the generator, and which was ajar and hanging off its hinges." So, of course, they contacted the sheriff, and the sheriff's like, "Wait a goddamn minute, this is a lie. You just said that you saw a large, big-ass bird with glowing red eyes and 10-foot wings. This is a lie.
He's like, "You kids are smoking."
Now, this occurred in the area. You kids been smoking. You been smoking that reefer?
Damn it.
Now, this occurred in the area called the McClintic Wildlife Management Area. This is where it was believed that there's this mass grave of Native Americans. Now, even the Native Americans, though, were like, "We ain't fucking with this shit." In this town, this area is also known as the TNT area. Now, it's a former munitions plant. It was a munitions plant from like 1942 to 1945. I've seen that it covers 8,000 acres, 2,500 acres, or 3,700 acres. I don't fucking know, but that's not really an important point. So pick one. But more importantly, there were explosives still stored there. So they called it the TNT area. So after its shutdown, it was turned into a chemical waste dumping ground, and then later given to the state as a wildlife preserve.
Nobody wants to go around.
Why would you do that?
Quadruple threat.
So then by the 1960s, it turned into like a hangout and a lover's lane and shit, and people was just kicking it over there, which to me doesn't sound all that sexy. But what do I know?
I guess it would be a hideout if nobody ever wants.
I mean, it'll be dark, but this is how you run into shit like this. So, in true Beauty and the Beast fashion, the townspeople decided that they were going to get their guns and try to shoot the thing.
Let's chase them up the mountain.
Gaston.
But they were hunting it because they saw it.
Well, because
they
were trying to find it. You know, they were trying to find it. I respect them for that, though, because as city people, we'd be like, "Does hell go with no? We ain't going up there. Shit, they better figure
You ain't flying next to my car. I'm good."
Call Giorgio Sakalos. You have him bring his ass down here. And all his fellow cryptozoologists.
I need y'all to come to Chicago immediately.
Exactly. Now, this area had another occurrence, though, that happened before Scarberry and Mallet. And it was 2 National Guardsmen who said they saw a half bird, half man perched on a tree in the McClintic wildlife area. By November 16th, the Scarberry and Mallet story was published in the Point Pleasant Register. And the headline was, "Couple see man-side bird, ... creature, ... something." Which I was like, that is fucking dope. Now, Another occurrence occurred days before on November 12, 1966. Four men and a man named Kenneth Duncan were digging a grave. This was actually in McClendon, West Virginia, an hour from Point Pleasant.
Okay.
When Duncan claimed to see a flying man fly over their heads, but the other men didn't see it. So only two saw it. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Only one saw it. Three didn't see it.
Right.
He reported it to the media right after the Scarberries reported their encounter. And his encounter is actually considered the first encounter. It's just that he didn't report it.
So it did happen before the
couples. Right.
But
Yep. Now, on November 14th, 1966, in Salem, West Virginia, a man named Merle Partridge and his wife, they were watching TV.
This is another November occurrence?
Yes. These are all November.
So they only attack in the fall?
It's so strange, right? It's really, well, because the series, I think the November, I'm calling it the November event. I didn't make that up. That's not even a thing.
No.
But the fact that this happened so consistently is back to back to back. Yeah, exactly. So Merle Partridge, he was chilling, watching TV with his wife when the television started to make a noise. He said it was about 10:30 that night, and suddenly the TV blanked out. A real fine herringbone pattern appeared on the tube. And the same time, the set started a loud whining noise, winding up to a high pitch, peaking and breaking off as if you were on a musical scale and you went as high as you could and came back down and repeated it. So I guess it was like, woo, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It sounded like a generator winding up. That's what he said. So he said, it reminded me of a hand-filled generator that one might use for portable radio transmission in an emergency. He said, all of a sudden, Bandit, which was Merle's German Shepherd, started barking. Then Merle's TV exploded. It just poof,
What?
I mean, and they had like the raw version of the TV. He's like, that shit was literally right behind the glass, the cathode ray. So he grabbed his gun. He went out on the porch. His dog ran towards a nearby barn, like a hay barn he had.
Your TV explodes and you immediately grab a gun and run outside.
Because his dog was like barking outside. He's like, I can't worry about it. She got that. She got the broom. She know what a broom is.
I'm going outside to figure it out.
So he said that he saw two silent circling red lights, one lingering for a few minutes. He said, I shined the light in that direction and it picked up two red circles or eyes. I was scared. I had to look back. I was like, are we still recording? Don't get high on the podcast.
Or drunk.
Or drunk, exactly. So still, he said, I shined the light in that direction and it picked up two red circles or eyes, which looked like bicycle reflectors. Still, there was something about those eyes that is difficult to explain. When I was a kid, I night hunted all the time, and I certainly know what animal eyes look like. So as coon, dog, and cat eyes, he said, such as coon, dog, and cat eyes, he's seen those eyes in the dark. He said, these were much larger, but one thing, it's the good length of, he said, larger for one thing, it's a good length of a football field to that hay barn. So that's actually pretty far to see something that clear.
Like it seems like it's closer than you
he said it was
probably than it is.
He said probably around 150 yards. Still, those eyes showed up huge for that distance. His dog sadly never returned. The next day he went to search for the dog. He found a large number of his dog tracks, but they were going in a circle as if he was chasing his tail. And he never chased his tail. Then the tracks just ended.
Everything's so mysterious about these cryptids.
Yeah. Because honestly, because like my dog never chased her tail. If she just up and decided to chase her tail, that would freak me out. Like I'd be like, what is wrong with your butt?
What's wrong with you? Yeah.
Now, everyone was seeing the bird. I mean, they were getting reportings from multiple counties, and people started to post up in the TNT area to spot it, which is typical. People do that type of shit about a lot of things. There are those people out there who's just not scared, and they really want to see it.
Right.
Now, one man saw it sitting on his lawn. Another, a group of teenagers, saw a man-sized bird-like creature standing beside a rock quarry. It was happening all over the place. Now, the description was it was consistent. 6 to 7 feet tall with a wingspan of 10 to 12 feet. There were not a lot of accounts about like the face, but people always reference the eyes, right. The red eyes. People
maybe like the eyes took up the whole face.
Yeah, like a fly.
They're so big.
Exactly. And people said they were hypnotic. People said that the bird was silent, rarely flapped its wings to fly, but instead leaped straight off the ground, just like a rocket. So some did say that it would also make a squeaking sound. One person said that the bird sounded like a big mouse. What we also know, though, is that this bird must have, it was fast as hell. You chasing a car at 100 miles
alongside a car,
but without flapping your wing. You're not even using air. You just naturally flying that fast.
It's like superhero.
Yes, and I guess putting your wings down makes you more aerodynamic.
But there's a force that's making you go.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the wind.
It's like you're just flying.
Yeah, when you're flying, you're using the wind to propel yourself.
Exactly.
But this is just
there. It's just like,
bam.
It's a rocket, kind of, right? So Bob Bosworth, he said that he was riding with his friends on their motorcycles when he spotted glowing red spots on top of the power plant. When they pulled up to the TNT area, they saw a tall creature with red eyes. They said they could hear the flap of the wings, and then boom, the monster was gone. Faye DeWitt Laporte, she spotted the bird right by her passenger side window on the road in the car with her brother. She couldn't tell if it was running or flying because it was keeping up with the car. So they headed into the TNT area and the bird followed it. The bird then jumped on the hood of the car and stared at them and then flew off. She said she didn't recall wings. She just remembered seeing it jump on top of a 5-story building. They even tried to hit it with debris to get it to go away, but that's when the bird opened its wings and flew away. Lawrence Gray, he was a local teacher. He said he woke up in the morning to find the creature standing next to his bed, which to me is just mad weird because I don't know too much about people having these encounters indoors.
Yeah, it's always out in the nature.
Yeah. And I don't, so
wooded area.
I grabbed his interview because it's mad religious-y.
Now he's making stuff up.
And I don't even know, but he had an interview on this dude named L.A. Marzulli's blog in 2013. And he claimed that he interviewed Lawrence Gray. And his experience is interesting. So here's Lawrence Gray. He said, I came out of a church and across Jefferson Avenue. We lived in the house right across from the church. I walked up to the door and had a sense that somebody was in the house. I didn't say anything to my wife, but I felt that there was somebody in the house. I opened the door, went to the living room, and walked around in the bedroom and bath and other bedrooms and looked around and didn't see anything. I turned around and went into the kitchen. We had a basement door and a wire hook that locked it. And that night, that hook was not hooked. I thought that whoever was in the house was in the basement. I opened the door, went down in the basement, looked all around, still didn't see anything. I was wondering and thinking and went to bed that night. At about 3 a.m, I was awakened from my sleep. I woke up wide awake. I looked out the window and saw a car come up to the intersection. I turned my head to the right and then I saw it. It was a 6-foot tall. He was like, but I was lying on the bed. He said, I was looking down diagonally towards my wife's side of the bed. He had wings. Everything was bending together. There were feathers, 2 wings that came out to points like a wing. His eyes were sunk into his head. He had a head that was formed with his shoulders. Apparently, it had no neck, which keeps coming up, almost like an owl.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And wings down both sides. Down from his hips, it was a kind of robe-like thing. From his hips down,
it sounds like a mutant superhero.
Yeah, or like a mutant sleep paralysis demon.
Yeah.
He said from the hips down, it was different. No seams, no trousers, but more like a robe. So then the interviewer says, well, what did the thing look like? He said, a silver glow, but it wasn't bright and sunny. He said it was lit up. It was the wickedest spirit I have ever felt. I couldn't say anything. My voice choked. I couldn't make it work. I was paralyzed with fear. It overwhelmed me. I knew the only thing I could do was plead the blood of Jesus. I kept repeating it over and over. Little by little, it faded away. It went into nothing and was gone, and all of its wickedness went with it. So, you know what's funny about this? Because there is more to this.
And then I said, amen.
Exactly. But what's funny about this, too, is that in Mothman Prophecies, he references whether or not, like, it's because, you know, some of these people are just, like, overly religious, too. That they start to fill in, their imagination starts to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, like but it goes back to like kind of what you said. You're like, if you already know the history of this and you already know it's on the evil side,
yeah,
or you think it's on the evil side,
yeah,
somebody that's that religious is
absolutely,
it is absolutely evil.
Yeah,
like
yeah, for sure. It's a biblical thing when, you know, but we already know science and religion kind of oil and water, and it shouldn't be. I mean, they kind of work with each other.
Based on those same concepts.
Exactly.
Different ways of telling the story.
He said, so the interviewer said, can you describe in detail what the thing you saw looked like? Did it have a face? Did you see its eyes? Or are they hypnotic in any way? What did you feel when you first saw it? How did your body react to it? He said, the presence I saw standing on the right side of the bed at the foot was about 6 feet tall. It was a dirty lunar color that glowed somewhat. He said,
this is a different one.
Yeah, no, this is the same guy. Okay. He said it was a dim glow, but a glow. It had a face, but it had sunken places for eyes. And it was clear they were looking at me, and I looked at it, and I was frozen with fear from the feeling of the evil power in the room. It was the personification of evil. Evil is like pain. You can't see it, but you know when it is there. He says, how did it make you feel while you looked at it? He said, I felt awful. I felt afraid. I knew the devil couldn't get me, but the wicked presence froze me. I lost control. I was overcome with fear. I was totally engulfed in what was there. He said, you mentioned that you had an overwhelming feeling of evil. Can you explain this? In our interview, you used the word wicked. Can you elaborate on this? And so I was like, this situation here is mad sus. I don't know if this is related to this because it's not to say
another one.
Yeah, another type of entity maybe, because I get you with the wing stuff, but then I always ask too, like how much of it is your imagination and the fact that all these stories are happening and the fact that our mind kind of just thinks that the plant in the corner is like an evil demon.
I will tell you this really quickly. Story. Just 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Last night, hand washed a sweater that I have because you can't wash it.
Yeah.
Folded it over a hanger. Hung it in my doorway to dry. Middle of the night, I wake up and I'm just, flipping over. And I look and it is a hanging sweater.
Yeah.
Above, high up because it's on the thing. And I flipped the fuck out in my bed. I was like, get butt. And I was like, oh, it's my sweater.
Oh my God.
But it's like, you even look yourself.
Yeah.
Because every night that sweater's not always there. There because the air hits it.
There you go.
And I just woke up and was like, oh. And then I was like, oh, no, I remember when I hung my sweater. And that's what it was.
Yeah.
So it was very quick.
Yeah. I'm a little, I kind of like prepare for that type of shit sometimes. Like when I see from my bed, I don't like the way a hoodie is hanging, or I'm moving it. I'm moving it because this is gonna fuck me up when it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm on my way to the bathroom. Right. Like this is a bad idea.
This guy, he's laying. First of all, you said
he was laying down.
I don't know how I would be able to judge the height of a person laying down.
Everybody's gonna look a little tall.
Yeah.
Yeah. because you're at your lowest point.
Yeah, this guy probably had something that was bothering him. That is
dangerous. He's
so just to give you guys a little inside what's happening, she's trying to pour a drink over her laptop.
It's like, and then podcast doesn't record anymore.
That's
bad idea. Okay, so sorry. So,
but back to what you just said. You think that story is kind of another.
People have so many different types of experiences, but I put his in because I was like, this is one of those accounts that were just like that felt so religiously that I was like, I wanted you to hear it, and I'm like, do you think that this is even remotely related to just hearing about the bird in general? Like, first of all, it happened indoors. That's weird.
He is out of the red-eyed club because
where's Red Eyes? Yeah,
it's not a part of it.
So I just felt like this dude may have had a paranormal or supernatural experience, but I just don't know if it was the Mothman. Now, on November 18th, your birthday, happy birthday, Sal, tomorrow. Two men, Paul Yoder and Benjamin Enoch. They were volunteer firemen. They were in the TNT area when they saw a giant bird with red eyes. They thought it was likely an owl, and when they tried to find it, there was no trace of it. Howard Miller said he saw one and landed on a bus shelter. November 20th, 5 teenagers driving along a creek said their headlights illuminated and a man-sized bird-like creature standing on a rock quarry, and it turned and ran off into the woods. On November 25th, Thomas Urey said he noticed a tall gray man-like figure standing in a field by the road. Suddenly, it spread a pair of wings and took off straight up like a helicopter. He said it rose off the trees and started making circles like a bird. He said it would come lower and lower on the car, about 75 feet over it, and had about a 10-foot wingspan. He said, quote, I was so scared I just couldn't go to work that day. This thing had a wingspan every bit of 10 feet. It could be a bird, but I certainly never saw one like it, and I was afraid it was going to come down right on top of me. Oh,
it's terrifying.
November 26th, this happened in Charleston. Ruth Foster is one of the few to say that she saw its face. Now, she said it was standing on the lawn beside the porch. She said it was tall, had big red eyes that popped out of its face. Her husband, she said, my husband is 6'1", and this bird looked about the same height or a little shorter, maybe. She said it had a little funny face and didn't see any beak. She said, all I saw were those two big red poppy eyes. These eyes are...
I just need to know what these eyes look like.
These eyes. She said, I screamed and ran back into the house. My brother-in-law went out to look, but it was gone. November 27th, Connie Parker in Mason, West Virginia. She had not only seen a flying saucer, but she also developed Klieg conjunctivitis from witnessing powerful lights, which is a very common occurrence with people who have witnessed the lights of a flying saucer directly. They develop severe pink eye. Like, she said that she saw a winged man, but she saw it in the daytime.
Oh,
all of these are
twists.
Mm-hmm.
That's a change in environment, and
it sure is. The the profile is slightly off.
Predators hunt at night.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sheila Kane and her sister, they were walking from the store when they saw an enormous, she said, something standing in a junkyard. She said it was gray and white with big red eyes. And she said it must have been 7 feet tall, taller than a man. She screamed, ran home. It flew up in the air and followed us part of the way. Then this guy named Richard West said that the creature flew straight up like a helicopter. Like, everybody's having the same description. A few little, some people see a little more, some people see a little less, but ultimately, to me,
same story.
Always the same story. The wings are consistent. The red eyes are consistent. The flying up like a helicopter is pretty goddamn consistent, because that is not how birds fly.
No.
You know, so now, according to John Keel, who is the author of Mothman Prophecies, he said that these takeoffs are impossible. Aerodynamically, the Mothman was ill-suited for flight. He said a creature larger than a big man and therefore weighing in excess of 200 pounds will require more than a 10-foot wingspan to get aloft. A large bird takes off by running along the ground and flapping its wings frantically. He said, my favorite, the Goonie bird of the Pacific, runs back and forth desperately trying to build up airspeed and then, more often than not, falls flat on its face.
Yeah, that's so cute. It's almost like a totem.
Yeah. Mothman, with his helicopter takeoffs, was impossible.
I want to know what they're talking about, the helicopter, because, usually it's like a...
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like he's just jumping really quickly. I see
Superman.
Picturing
it's 100% super. It's 100% Superman.
But I want to. But see, this is some. I just think it's something from another dimension that we just don't understand. Like everything else that comes in here, and they're talking about all those those pill-shaped alien.
Oh, for sure, the saucers
descend and go up within. Fractions of a second. It's kind of the same thing with this guy. He can leap tall buildings in a single bound. But fly, but almost like inertia.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's weird because he's basically saying that the way this thing is built, it's not built to fly like that.
Yeah.
It would have to. It's too heavy. Its wings are too short. It's not
scientifically possible.
Yeah, exactly. Now, he references like the Garuda, and how like the Hindus have their demigod. It was considered like the king of birds. He mentions the Thunderbird, which is from Native American mythology, and their giant birds. They had wingspans of 15 to 20 feet across, with the size, which is like the size of a small airplane. And the reason why it was called the Thunderbird was because it sounded like thunder when it flapped its wings. So that's a big ass bird. Now, hate to say it. Native American connection there. But anyway, we're talking about the Mothman. Now, there had also been other odd occurrences at the same time in that area. Now, a man named Woodrow Derenberger, he was driving home on November 2nd, 1966, when he spotted a gray metallic-looking vehicle in front of his car. He said it was shaped like an old-fashioned kerosene lamp chimney, flaring at both ends, narrowing down to a small neck, and then enlarging in a great bulge in the center. He said it was hovering above ground. He had no choice but to stop, because it was in the middle of the street. The vehicle opened and a heavily tanned man approached his truck. This type of shit is creepy. I'm telling you, approached his truck. He said that the man had a grin on his face, but kept his arms crossed with his hands under his armpits. Yes. Now.
I'm 50. I'm sorry. That's what I just pictured. And then
he said he was wearing a Rick James green sparkling outfit.
Don't do that.
I'm sorry. I'll pee on myself a little bit. He was wearing a Rick James green sparkling outfit under his coat. He said that the man was able to speak.
We were just singing Brick House today.
Wait, did he?
That's not Rick James, is it? He's not, man.
Nah. Wait, no.
Super Freak. That's what I'm thinking of.
And I was thinking, I was literally thinking of, give it to me, baby. That's what I'm saying. So the man was able to speak, though, to Derenberger. He spoke to him telepathically. Derenberger recalled, he said, I just had a feeling like I knew what this man was thinking, and he wanted me to roll down my window. He introduced himself as Cold. During the conversation, Derenberger notices that the ship elevated itself even more to allow other cars to pass. So Cold told Derenberger to report his encounter, and he would return at a later date. Cold hopped into his ship, and the ship flew away. Derenberger got a lot of attention after this encounter. And he would spend, though, the next several months and years dealing with people coming to his house uninvited, just like, not even just like creepy what did you see? Like not like news reporters and shit, but just like other entities.
Oh.
Yeah.
So he had more visitations of others.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Because cold keeps coming back to him. So later, Darren Berger would hear cold in his head telling him that coal was from Lanulos, which was a galaxy in Ganymede. Darren Berger would even claim later that cold gave him medicine for a stomach ailment he was suffering from, and it cured him instantly. I don't know.
I'm saying it's another dimension.
I'm just saying. Now, on November 17, 1966, a woman named Roy Gross, which I think Roy is such a cute name for a woman, was awakened by her dog barking at 4:45 in the morning. She looked out the kitchen window and she saw an enormous object hovering over the trees. She said it was circular and was bright. And she said it was the size of a small house. 2 weeks later, a woman spots a big cylinder object. It lands and two men exit the craft and they start speaking to her. Now, Marcella Bennett and Mr. and Mrs. Walmsley, they had an experience with the Mothman that November, but they were like on their way to visit some friends or whatever that kind of like lived in a TNT area. But when they got there, the friends weren't home. So I think when they got to their friend's house, it was like just the kids were there type shit. So as they were about to leave, they saw this figure just rise up from the ground.
From inside of the ground? Like it just sprouted?
Literally? It seemed like it sprouted. It read like it sprouted. And she said she knew it was not of this earth. She saw a figure with no feet and claimed it had wings like a bird. She said, quote, a big gray thing, bigger than a man with terrible glowing red eyes. When they went back into the house, they shut the door and could hear something on the porch. So later, Marcella would have a weird encounter that following December. She was riding with her daughter when like this red Ford Galaxy, which I don't know what type of vehicle that was in the 60s, started. It's like, who knows? Pickup truck? I don't know. Started to follow her. And the man that was driving was like really big. And she said he had on a big bushy wig.
Clown wig?
What are we talking about here? She said she slowed down, but the car drove past her and disappeared. Mm-hmm. People in Point Pleasant started seeing shit like on a nightly basis. Turns out there were dozens of UFO witnesses. Some people didn't even feel comfortable reporting their experiences until they heard about others' experiences because they just thought everybody was going to think they were crazy. So they also didn't know if it was the military or not. There were part of them that
secret stuff.
Like, you know how it always is, like, oh, it's a weather balloon, and oh, it's always a weather balloon. It's like, first of all, what is that? Why are we doing that? Now, the Athens Messenger had a special assignment. That was a paper. Had a special assignment desk where they would be getting calls about UFOs. And one person who handled a lot of them was this woman by the name of Mary Heyer. She was a reporter in Point Pleasant, and she started collecting stories. And she wrote this column called "Where the Waters Mingled," because Ohio and West Virginia were connected by the Ohio River, but it was a confluence where one end of it is from one area and then it comes together into one. Mm-hmm. And so that's why she called it Where the Waters Mingle, because they had this like bridge that connected them, kind of like Savannah and North Carolina. Okay. And mm-hmm. So she would also go and build a very strong working relationship with a man by the name of Gray Barker and the author of Mothman Prophecies, John Keel. He mentions her a lot in his book. Heyer would also go on to have her own experiences. She started having a ton of experiences. Mary and John, they started receiving phone calls and hearing voices on the other line. And they would get like electronic beeps and shit and like just like static. Just
on the phone.
Just on the phone. But she had an office set up and people would come visit her all the time. She had an encounter with the Men in Black. So as the media, here we go. So as the media started to cover the sightings, people started getting visits from the Men in Black, and we mean Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, and it was interesting too because he mentions in the book, like I don't know how much you remember of Men in Black, but in Men in Black, their names are just letters. Like Will Smith's name's J, and Tommy Lee Jones' character's name is K, right? This encounter that she has with this Man in Black, he is wearing this weird badge, but it has a K on it. And John Keel thinks that it's because it's the Greek alphabet for is it Omega? I think Omega.
Well, Omega is the
one that kind of looks like an E.
No, that's Sigma.
No, that's not it there. Anyway, but
Delta, Gamma, Epsilon, Zeta, Eta, Theta. No. Gamma.
It's either Omega. I gotta look it up.
But you said it does look like an E.
I think it's an E.
That's Sigma.
Maybe that's the one. I don't remember. But there is a connection to it, which was interesting because when I saw the K in the book, I was like, oh, that was Tommy Lee Jones' name in Men in Black. So it's like, I wonder, because when you think about it, I mean, it's kind of loosely based on these types of figures. It literally is. I mean, their thing was that people would have these experiences just after they had a strange visitor or a UFO encounter, which is exactly what happened in the movie. And people would say that these people were very unusual. They were often talking in a speech that was very peculiar, or they would sound like they were reciting shit from memory. So they were not able to effectively play human. They were typically ill-dressed for the weather. They had bad, weird haircuts, obviously. Look at homeboy in the bushy wig. Mm-hmm. They would wear suits, and they would ultimately try to just stop people from sharing their stories, which is what the Men in Black is about.
Yeah, you can remember that. Yeah, they try to wipe, not really, and not to say that it's a reference to the movie, but that's what they do in the movie. But they're essentially here to make you forget about your experience.
Exactly. So you don't tell other people.
Tell all the secrets.
Exactly. So Hire was threatened by one. Here's a direct quote. She said they seemed a lot like twins, she recalled later. Both were short and wore black overcoats. Their complexions were dark, somewhat oriental. That keeps coming up, that they look Asian.
Really?
Yeah. Which I was like, Native Americans messing with y'all. But then I was like, I mean, Native Americans, typically they're people of the, like, you know, the ship and all the lights and the shiny suits and shit. I can't imagine, like, do you know what I mean? Like,
but maybe that's why they called it a Thunderbird, because when it would take off, it would look like it was spreading its wings, but it would be really like propulsion of like boom.
Yeah, it may be. Maybe because
all they could think of is they only know nature, and they'd be like, oh, it's a big bird.
That's true. That's true
it's
too.
It's a Thunderbird, so that makes the sound of the Thunderbird. You know,
that's true.
Maybe it was.
Well, which is interesting too, because people, this whole like it squeaks. That thing is weird. You know, when they say sound like a big
mouse
mouth
or like a mouse. Mm-hmm. No, that's not.
Okay, so she said the complexions were dark, somewhat oriental, she thought. She said, we hear there's been a lot of flying saucer activity around here, one of them remarked. She was taken aback. The bridge disaster had dominated everyone's thoughts for the last week, so flying saucers were the furthest thing from everybody's mind. We have had quite a few sightings here, she responded, turning in her chair to pull open a filing cabinet. She hauled out a bulging folder filled with clippings of sightings reports and handed it to one of the men. He flipped it open, gave the pile of clippings a cursory glance, and handed it back. Has anyone told you not to publish these reports? She shook her head, and she shoved the folder back into the drawer. What would you do if someone did order you to stop writing about flying saucers? I'd tell them to go to hell, she smiled wanly. The two men glanced at each other. She went back to her list, and when she looked up again, they were gone.
That was like an idle threat.
Yeah. I'm like, bet. Really? Bet.
They're coming at her like, what would you do if we
insinuating.
Insinuating don't do it.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to know what we're
You don't even want to know. So now they always say this tan skin or looked Asian. I've heard looked Native American, which is a very interesting detail.
You said the other guy that experienced the hovering car thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was a dark-skinned person too.
Yeah. Sometimes these men were caught wearing reflective clothing, but ultimately their dress was always kind of out of place. So they would also sometimes be driving older model cars, but more frequently black Cadillacs.
Mm-hmm.
Men in Black. So there were sightings after sightings after sightings after sightings between 1966 and December 1967. Now, many encounters reference something bad happening in Point Pleasant. And Miss Virginia Thomas, a woman blessed with the gift, she was in her kitchen.
It's like she's a psychic.
Yeah, she's like
blessed with gift.
Blessed with the gift. Was in her kitchen near the TNT area when she heard a loud squeaking sound. The best way I can describe it, she told Mrs. Heyer and me, is that it was like a bad fan belt, but much louder. I stepped outside. It seemed to be coming from one of the igloos. Now, there were like these little, they called them igloos that were on the TNT area. You know, like those little domed. Yeah. So then she said,
aluminum, like a bunker.
Yeah, exactly. She said, then I saw, that's where they used to keep the ammunition dry. She said, then I saw a huge shadow spreading across the grass. It was just after noon, so there shouldn't have been any shadow like it. Then this figure appeared. It walked erect like a man, but it was all gray, and it was much bigger than any man I ever saw. It moved very fast across the field and disappeared into the trees. It didn't seem to be walking exactly. It was almost gliding, faster than any man could run. From the very beginning, Thomas started having terrible dreams. She said, I see a lot of strange people around the river. She said, it's like some kind of invasion or something. They come over the bridge in trucks and they pour into the TNT area. We grab the kids and run. I can't figure out what it means. Just before I got your letter, this is her talking to Kiel, I had a terrible nightmare. There were a lot of people drowning in the river, and Christmas packages were floating everywhere in the river. She said, I've covered a lot of drownings on that river, but never anything like this dream. There were so many people. I've been feeling uneasy ever since, and everybody else seems the same way. You can't really put your finger on it, but it's something off. She said, but it's like something awful is about to happen. So Mary Heyer would go on to tell Kiel, she's like, you know, we're not getting too many UFO situations anymore. It's almost like they're laying low. And she's like, everything's quiet. It's too quiet. Yeah. So according
the calm before this,
exactly. So according to Kiel, there were instances where entities would attempt to describe things, but like because he was getting these like weird calls, and he would get like all these weird interactions with people that were like felt government. But then he would also get, you know, he also had this weird relationship with like this entity, like that he was communicating with, that was like giving him fucking information. And one of the things that he would describe, he said they would describe things, but the dates would always be wrong. He claimed that he received a call that Martin Luther King was going to be murdered on February 4th. He would be shot in the throat while standing on a balcony in Memphis. He claims to have frantically tried to contact King, but he never got through to him. And King was killed on April 4th, exactly the way they described. He said he started to receive warnings of this like blackout that was going to occur in December, and of a terrible disaster that was going to happen on the Ohio River. They said that many people would die. So he wrote to Mary Heyer. He said, quote, I have a reason to suspect that there may soon be a disaster in Point Pleasant area which will not be related to the UFO mystery. A plant along the river may either blow up or burn down. Possibly the native installation in Point Pleasant will be the center of such disaster. A lot of people may be hurt. Don't even hint to anybody anything about this. He was trying to like keep it on the hush. Now,
it's very Nostradamus.
Yeah, for sure. Fast forward to December 15th. I mean, again, he's trying to keep this super hush. He's like waiting anxiously for this blackout. So he tells his homeboy Dan Drayson, he stops by his home and they're like talking. His friend Joe Wood was already there. Joe Wood is like one of Kill's oldest friends. By 5:00, Dan had left and Kill had turned on the TV. He was preparing to hear about a blackout. And so this was during like a Christmas tree lighting ceremony.
Which is happening tomorrow.
Yes.
So
when President Johnson delivered his speech and proceeded to hit the switch to turn on the Christmas tree, the broadcast was interrupted by, we interrupt this program for a special bulletin. A bridge laden with rush hour traffic has just collapsed in Gallipolis, Ohio. Further details as soon as they are available. He was confused. He was like, okay, there is no bridge in that part of Ohio. He only knew of the Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant, and that stretched over the river. So he said that he was like talking to himself, and he was like, they've done it again. He's like, here they go, fucking up the information, basically. Because he's like, they'll never get this information right. He's like, they've done it again. They knew this was going to happen. But then he was like, they knew this was going to happen. They knew when it was going to happen. He said, and they gave me all that bilge about a power failure. They knew. They just didn't want me to warn anyone. And so then he said,
you're just not going to know.
Exactly. So then his friend Joe says, who's they? And then he said his phone rang and it was Dan. And then Dan was like, did you hear? And then he's like, I heard. That's what it was all about, Dan. And then he was like, that's what it was all about. And I was reading this in the book. I was like, wait, what? So the collapse of the Silver Bridge.
Right.
It was constructed in 1928, and it was a bridge that was connecting the Ohio side of the river to the West Virginia side. So the trucks and locals, they crossed this bridge all the motherfucking time to go work, to go shop, to visit friends, woo, woo, woo. 10 days before Christmas, December 15th, 1967, the stoplight right before the bridge went out. Now, it was stuck on green, and the traffic was backing up in both directions. The light on the Point Pleasant side remained red so long that regular bridge users would just run it. So people were so used to just running it because it would, you know what I mean? It was just a shitty timed light.
Yeah.
They would just ignore it. So the bridge was weighing down. It started bouncing around and shaking. And by some accounts, they were like, it kind of always did. Like, it, you know what I mean? Because, I mean, it wasn't constructed that well, but they were used to just people going through and through and through. At 5:04 p.m., the bridge twisted, and they said that you can hear the sound of steel. And you can hear the spans split, the cables snapped, and over 50 vehicles fell into the waters of the Ohio River. Steel then proceeded to fall on top of the people that were in the water that were surviving.
They fell into the water, and
then the bridge started to fall on them. The bridge collapse killed 46 people, and some of the victims were UFO witnesses. Now, Mary Hyre would also tell Kill that it's the most terrible thing I've ever seen, but I was kind of prepared for it. She said, you know, those dreams I had. Well, it was exactly like that. The packages are floating in the water, the people crying for help. Those dreams came true. Hyre would say also that she was told that a woman who lived near the bridge saw two men climbing it 2 days prior. They were climbing around the sides of it and oddly not wearing work gear, but wearing ordinary shoes and checkered coats with black trousers. Which is mad strange.
So weird.
Now, Mary, she passed away later. But she was, the town was devastated by this. The Mothman stuff kind of dissipated at that point. People weren't reporting it as much.
I feel like I've heard a story about this also, but people say that they did witness the Mothman around that tragedy.
Yeah. You know,
he was standing on the bridge and then he took off when it happened.
You know, it's funny because I feel like something like that came up in the movie, because in the movie they never really used, I don't remember them using like the bird image. It was almost like this like hazy, smoky, apparition-y type image. But I kind of had that image in my head too of like, I was like, why do I remember somebody saying that. And so people would, start to associate the Mothman with the bridge collapse, but I didn't really see a lot of accounts of like, oh, this was, I saw a saucer, or you know what I mean? Like, and so, now the question is, was the Mothman a harbinger of doom? I mean, were the aliens just trying to warn these people this whole time? Was this all just some weird grand experiment? Was it all just supernatural and it just happened and it is what it is? Like, what was it? And then is it possible? Because I saw too on one thing, like, is it possible that this Mothman that everybody thinks that they saw, is it possible that it was, I didn't know this was possible, but I guess it is because all the fucking movies do it. Certain, like, I want to say not parasites, but like I want to say viruses. What am I looking for? Shit falling from other shit out in space.
Yeah.
Biologically reconstructing the DNA of a species that's already here.
Absolutely, because I just saw something on the news too. They said that scientists are like at an overwhelming rate of finding new things on Earth.
Yeah.
That they're having trouble naming.
See? Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I feel like it's the whole other issue that we talk about, that, panspermia.
Yeah, for sure.
From other worlds.
Yeah.
Planting themselves here, growing, doing whatever they got to do. What I wanted to actually ask you about really quickly is to get this straight.
Mm-hmm.
In that city,
Point Pleasant.
I almost said Pleasantville.
I know. I always do that too.
Pleasant Point.
Point Pleasant.
What kind of ammunition was that?
Like, so
nuclear.
So that's what I was about to say too. So one thing that did come up was whether or not this was a mutated bird, because they were, whether it was ammunition, they were dropping chemicals there at some point. It turned into a chemical dump. And that was one thing that they did suspect. The only issue is, where does it go? Where is it going? Where does it nest?
Yeah, where does
it live? Where does it hide out? Why are there no other ones?
So the reason I asked that, it was almost like a Spider-Man situation. Like he got, bitten by a
the bionic.
spider.
Yeah.
All this crap happens. I was more on the other side, to where like other things that I've watched or heard about is, all the UFO sightings.
Sure.
They're always close to nuclear plants and or where there's nuclear energy.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, like, if that's just become like a portal or something.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Where things are coming through.
Sure.
It's UFOs.
Yeah.
It's this Mothman.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that little gray dude that other guy saw with wings.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a portal where other things.
Well, for sure.
And it always happens in November.
Or, or it's just like at this moment that particular portal was open. Because it's not you're not really hearing that much about it now. You know what I'm saying? But it's like this little blip in time where they're just getting all this heavy activity. Now, I do understand the correlation to the Silver Bridge, like, boom, all these things. But I'm like, is that enough of an event? No disrespect, but because people obviously lost their lives. But it's not like this was like the World Trade Centers and I know it's probably that for the people that live there. But I feel just like aliens could tell you that a bridge was going to collapse in a bunch of different ways without all this extra shit. Like, there's a way to do that without being like, and here's some aliens, and here's a dude with a bushy wig, and here's a Birdman. Like, just tell them that you could have had, the lady with the gift. You could have had the lady with the gift tell everybody that because she already knew.
Yeah, she already knew.
She's so part of me, it's just so, if any of his accounts are true, why are they so all over the place? Like, okay, I get the Mothman. The Mothman is wild. But then you got the UFO part. Then you got the Men in Black part. Then you got the bushy, oversized dude and the bushy wig dude. Then you got, like, it gets even weirder in the book, though. I mean, this is like a band of circus freaks. Like, it's just all types of people.
It just keeps pulling me back to like, it's a portal where activity happens, but it's kind of like in a forgotten city where
it's almost like a pass.
Nobody's going to believe you.
Yeah.
If you see this, nobody's going to believe
you. That's true.
You're in the middle of nowhere. We already know this.
Or is it like just like a pass through, like a tunnel, where it's like these things just of all sorts were passing through it during this time, and maybe they're not doing it so much now.
And maybe the Men in Black were regulating
the traffic.
You'd be like, did you see a UFO? Did you? Because I'm going to have to talk to that homie.
Yeah.
Because he should not be coming through here.
Yeah.
Oh,
and did they cause the Silver Bridge collapse to distract you from everything else that you were experiencing? Because after that, all the sightings, all the reportings had plummeted. Now you got people who are so devastated over the loss of these people. It's a shift in consciousness. Like, oh shit, this is actually affecting me in a different way, instead of like a bunch of people who are likely just bored having this experience. I don't know. It's all, when you hear it back to back to back in pieces, you're like, this is a lot to have. This isn't even all of it. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't even all of it. There's so many legs to it. So I don't know what it is. I mean, I think the Mothman could either be an interdimensional creature, just like we're saying, and why they're having this UFO thing, I'm like, because there was a point in the book where he was saying like one of the visitors that he got would basically tell him how they were living, like what it's like on their planet.
Say that one of the Mothman told them?
No, not the Mothman, because nobody ever talks to the Mothman.
Yeah, it seems to where
he just comes and goes. Well. Yeah, exactly.
Where like most everyone has said that they are paralyzed,
hypnotized,
paralyzed, can't talk, but yet they still feel an energy coming from that thing.
Yeah, but it's not a direct conversation the way it is with.
It's like
Endrick Cole, for example.
Yeah, it's more like energy.
Yeah,
it's like an energetic.
And I just wonder,
why they're paralyzed. Because
it's like, is this thing like Bigfoot? Like,
absolutely.
I mean, it clearly has the ability to leave and come and leave and come and leave and come.
That one doesn't really care about being seen, though.
No, true. That is true. And I think that the UFO stuff and the interactions with these spacemen, sometimes when I hear their descriptions, I'm like, this just sounds like something from the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Where does all that stuff come from?
Yeah.
All those stories.
Oh, for sure. Because there was even a part of it where John Keel talks about people being in tune with certain shit and then sharing it with the world in their way. Yes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the aliens have people here that they are kind of like using to share their situation.
Like I said earlier.
Yeah.
Nostradamus.
Exactly.
What made me think about that is, like you said, that guy got, this secret message, but he wasn't told when it was going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's the kind of the same thing. It's like, all of his documentations of approximately when things are going to happen, but whatever that little you get, it's going to happen. I'm not giving you a time.
No, they're not giving you all of it.
They really don't want you to have all of the information.
No, and there was even a communication that he had where, like, the alien was just kind of like, "What are y'all doing down here?
You're a mess.
Like, this is a shit show." Now, some think too that it was it's called a teratorn, which is the short version for this bird that like was extinct for like 10,000 years. But when I looked up the bird, it's a big ass bird.
Was that one that looks like a crane?
It doesn't, because the cranes have the beaks, right? I don't remember this one having a beak. I'll show you a picture of it, but it's a big ass bird. It's a big bird, not the big bird.
The big bird. That's a big one.
Now, what's happening in Point Pleasant now? Some, people have still claim that they've had occurrences or whatever, but they do now have the Mothman Festival, which they host the third week in September. It kind of brings in tourism and things like that. They have
profit off this.
Hell yeah. And they, they've been doing it in festivals since 2002, which is actually when the movie came out. So it probably started around that point. They do 10 to 12,000 people a year. And they have like a Mothman museum. They have Mothman inspired contests. They make art. They do tours. They're really trying to
like costume contests.
Like they busy. Yeah, like any type of contest you could have.
Anything has to do with anything.
They even have a statue of the Mothman, like an art constellation of the Mothman in their town. That it's all over the internet. It's actually quite creepy.
Who did that?
I didn't look up the artist, but it's actually dope. It's actually a cool little situation. It makes the Mothman look a little more friendly than it seems to be, but
they're like, we got a project for you.
Exactly. Now, there have been also, I just want to end this with this. There has been Mothman sightings in Chicago.
Okay, stop.
You're going to have to put the rosé vodka down. Yeah. So in 2018, Vice had released an article about a guy who was like in Logan Square. I think he was in the back having like a cigarette or some shit. And he said he looked up, he thought it was a plane, and he saw a big fucking, what he thought was an owl. Like a big ass owl. And Chicago like had around 55 reports of bat-like birds with glowing red eyes, and some said they even saw them dropping onto hoods and peering through windows.
No.
No. Hey. Actually,
but we're living in 2022.
Yes, this happened in 2018. 2018, pre-pandemic, but 2018.
But very close to pre-pandemic.
And I saw that article and I was like, yeah, talk to me about that. But one episode I do want to explore is the O'Hare UFO sightings. I want to dig into that a little bit more because I don't know much about that. And my esthetician was like, you should definitely do that one because I don't know anything about it. I don't know if there's even much to read about it, but I think it's worth exploring. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So that is the craziness of the Mothman. And
Chicago. Yeah. Okay, I do have to go back to this. I did hear a story where they thought it indeed was an owl. Because I'm not a card-carrying member of the Audubon Society, but I've heard of the owl that we're talking about.
Yeah.
They don't come to California, but they do migrate.
Yeah.
And they said it was kind of like that when you shine a light in their eyes.
Yes.
Or that type of predator.
Mm-hmm.
The light shines back red.
Reflects it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's obviously, most of those, I don't even know if owls can really get that large, but I know at least 3 feet tall.
Sure. That's big though for a fucking owl.
Yeah. But in the hysterical state, like, did they think?
Or did you just see something big as hell? Yeah. You like, oh my God, it's big as hell. But even that one lady was like, my husband's 6'1".
Yeah. That's.
She kind of had like a reference point, but look, I'm with you. I think that there's a possibility this could be some mutated fowl.
What if it was one of the owls that got into the waste of the river?
But then I keep thinking, where does it go though? It would leave.
Must have some type of instinct.
That's true. But I would also feel like it would leave more of a trail than it does.
We don't ask that about Bigfoot.
Well, Bigfoot kind of leave Bigfoot. They leave big feet.
Big feet, but they don't.
They don't have a nest. Yeah,
we don't know where they live.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So even if it's a big ass owl, I don't think it's here. I don't think it lives here because it's like, and you disappear into the air and you fly. Where are you going? Where are you going? Is there like a cave?
Yeah. Where do you go after you fly out?
Yeah, exactly. So I really hope you all enjoyed this Tales from the Cryptid that I like Tales from the Cryptid of the Mothman because I found it incredibly interesting. And if you want to dig deeper into it, I will definitely put like the documentary I watched, the book that I listened to and read because I had to do both. That's so difficult. Trying to listen to a book and highlight shit. It's like, this is a nightmare.
I can't concentrate.
And I'm gonna post the Vice article where like the sighting happened in Chicago because there's a few more stories there. So yeah, and thank you, Sal.
Thank you for having me.
Happy almost birthday.
I know.
Whoop.
It's almost here.
Whoop, whoop,
We're about
whoop.
to get down after we sign off of this.
Get down. Exactly, because I gotta pee too. All right, y'all. We out. Peace.